the distinction between the days of the week begins to blur. And it is so important to, I think, cherish all of that, because it may feel day by day so kind of endlessly and sometimes hopelessly long, but the years are short and we will blink and go from having babies to suddenly living with tiny people who are very often very much like ourselves. The following is not meant to serve as medical advice. It is merely the story of my own journey and learning process. All the Unexpected, Season 2, Episode 1. The days are long and the years are short. Welcome back, dear listener. It's been quite the hiatus. Life is funny in the way it passes us by and in the way that you sort of blink, and here we are, probably edging on a year out from the last time we recorded an episode. It's good to be back. It's good to sort of explore this platform again and kind of think about how much has changed and how much has stayed much the same. Life with a child is an interesting paradox of somehow the days being endlessly long and the years infinitely short. I had read that once, I think, before I was ever a parent, and sort of mildly gleaned an understanding, but it wasn't till I sort of blinked one day and had a toddler, and the last of infancy's vestiges were gone, that I truly sort of understood what someone was talking about when they had said to me that the days are long and the years are short. It's quite true. I am now about today's date, 5 days away from my daughter's second birthday, and it is just shocking to think that we've sort of come this far in so many ways, and watching a person develop before you is just mind-blowing at times, and heartwarming, and slightly terrifying too, because there's this sort of moment where you want to kind of endlessly encourage the independence, but are also simultaneously and instinctually protecting them. So you're kind of teetering on this line of saying, okay, I want to facilitate you learning all of these things, and I want to sort of watch your independence blossom, but I also want to protect you from sort of jumping off a 3-foot table, right? It's this moment of balancing, no longer having a completely helpless infant, right? They learn to walk and they learn to run and jump and climb and eat on their own and begin to speak and understand and respond and demand for things. But at the same time, will cry and want to be held when they fall down, and do still sort of need to be tucked into bed and given a bath. And so you're watching that babyhood kind of slip away a little bit more each day, and that independence grow, but at the same time you do understand how they're still so endlessly dependent on you. And so there's such a kind of collection of emotions, and they're often sort of at odds with each other while you kind of juggle encouraging that independence, but also simultaneously protecting the person that is still very much a baby, right? And so I think it's been an interesting thing to reflect on, and I've been doing a lot of reading about toddler development and emotions and navigating what they call sort of big feelings in little people, right? And figuring out, how does one manage a tantrum, right? And how does one navigate facilitating that independence, but at the same time knowing that there are certain things you still have to take care of, and it's not a simple formula, right? And there is no kind of right way or wrong way, and I think each parent is sort of navigating this differently and on their own time and in their own way, and it's such a very special and unique time. And I think there's something even, I don't know if it's necessarily bittersweet, but something even more kind of telling for the NICU parent, because your journey began so differently, right? And it's this moment where we've all sort of been on the journey of watching the markers and the milestones and counting with adjusted age, right? And saying, okay, she's 6 months old now, but really only 3 months adjusted, so we can't expect too much. And yes, she's a year old now, but it's really 9 months adjusted. And so you have to sort of kind of in the beginning take all of that into consideration. And you're constantly, I think, as a NICU parent, more intensely as a parent of a micro preemie, right? Navigating this set of adjusted expectations, right? So that, okay, we're not really at that milestone, or we're not really doing the same thing, or we're not really quite caught up. And you spend this time very early in their lives kind of playing this catch-up game, right? You're sort of saying, okay, well, we'll maybe be at that marker a little bit later, and we might see that first step a little bit after everyone else, or we might not have quite the same expectations at a checkup because we have to take other medical things into consideration. And it's almost this moment where that sort of very early part of the development stages are kind of muted and adjusted, because you are still somehow of the mindset that this is a special case and this is unusual and things happened differently. And at a certain point, you begin to arrive at a place where things level off and things plateau, and suddenly, here we are. Most recently with my daughter, almost 2 years old, where I weighed her and I did the sort of height and the weight, and I put it on the chart. And we've been plotting that height and weight on charts since she was born, and in the 3rd percentile, and as tiny got. And all of a sudden I look up and she's in the 63rd percentile. All of a sudden, just kind of right there, smack in the middle, and average. This kind of just average child. Suddenly you're in this paradigm with all the other kids, and not adjusted age, and not counting it a bit differently, and not suddenly, not lowering, but sort of adjusting your expectations, because we're kind of quote unquote on track. And it's just a bit mind blowing. And part of you, I think, for the first time, exhales with a certain relief at the idea that, okay, well, this sort of extra added aspect that is sort of common to the NICU parent, but foreign to all other parents, is suddenly taken out of the context, right? Suddenly just part of one less thing that you have to think about. And it's a bit jarring because you almost feel as if, well, should I still worry about some of these things? Or am I somehow slacking off by saying, okay, well, this is one less thing to worry about? But it's relieving, and it's also a bit worrisome in one ways or another, because you're finally saying to yourself, okay, wait, I can count this extra piece of the puzzle as something that's of the past, and you will forever relate to this experience, and you will forever have, been a parent that gave birth to a preemie and spent time in the NICU and had a different paradigm with regards to development and milestones. But at some point, that chapter has now closed, and it's an odd kind of moment of saying, all right, well, I honor that experience, and I know that it has shaped so much of who I am as a parent and how our family navigates development and navigates milestones. But that at some point now, you're kind of in the same boat with the other 90% of the population that never went through this. And it's very it's a very special thing, and it's rather unique to the experience. And so I had this moment as we, in the last week, got rid of the crib. We had an escape artist who said, I'm just not sleeping in a crib anymore. That time is done. You guys figure it out. And so I sort of went about doing the research, and I had bought the 4-in-1 convertible scenario where it was meant to have a rail when you took the crib wall off and then become a toddler bed and all these sort of things. And for one reason or another, it just made sense to buy a toddler bed, start again for that scenario. And I went about sort of ordering the bed and waiting for it to arrive, and it still seemed a bit nebulous as when you're sort of waiting for anything to arrive from shopping online. And we open the box and have the inevitable sort of assembly, which, if anyone's ever tried to kind of assemble furniture with a toddler present, it's an infinitely more involved process than it needs to be. But we finished it, and we sort of put it in her room and set everything up, and kind of just sat there, and my husband and I looked at each other, and we said, oh my God, she's got a bed. This is a whole tiny person who's just not a baby anymore and has a bed, and we're gonna say, you go to bed, and she's gonna climb inside, which she did in the first night, super excited, because I think what we tend to forget sometimes is a lot of the toddler behavior we assign to being rebellious or, disruptive, or all the other sort of adjectives we often use to describe the quote unquote terrible twos, really ignore the fact that you're dealing with a whole person who is, leaving babyhood behind and yearning for every sort of possible moment of independence they can achieve, right? And so I watched this, tiny person, and I said, okay, get in bed. And she lit up and smiled and climbed in herself and tucked herself in and was thrilled to be able to be given that moment of independence, right? And autonomy. And it's such an important thing to remember at this stage, that it's not them being difficult and it's not them being defiant. It's them sort of yearning to be independent and become their own people and have opinions and be listened to and heard. And while all of that is the sort of natural impetus that they have, everything in the world is sort of working against them, right? And so they want to feed themselves, and we tell them you're too messy, and they want to dress themselves, and we say, well, that's not what you should be wearing. And they want to choose when they sleep, and we say, okay, no, this is the time. And so it's one of those things that I've had to kind of continue to remind myself and say, no, like, this is a moment where I have to do my most. I have to do my best to foster this autonomy and to embrace this change in the best and most encouraging way possible. So yeah, it's gonna take another 5 minutes to walk down the stairs as opposed to me carrying you, or it's going to be another 30 seconds to say, okay, you can buckle this part of the car seat, or feed yourself oatmeal that, if I had used the spoon would certainly be a lot neater. But I have to let go of some of that control and let go of some of that instinct. And I think here's where the challenge, I think, becomes greater for those of us whose children started life with such fragility and such precarious conditions, right? And so I was going through preemie clothes the other day, and I've saved a lot more things than I probably should have, mostly for being a rather sentimental pack rat as it is. And I'm looking just at the size of a preemie onesie and recalling a time when that was so big that it swam on her, and held it kind of side by side to a 2T onesie, and just marveled at how far we'd come, and marveled at the miracle and the gift that it is to watch this person grow. And it is so incredible because for so long at the beginning of this journey, everything was so fraught with the need to be extra careful and be sort of overprotective and over concerned. And, I just remember going down to that very first visit to the NICU, I suppose the morning after my daughter was born, and she's in this tiny little box, weighing 1 pound, 8 ounces, and wearing the smallest diaper anyone's ever seen. I didn't think they even made them that small. And just feeling like every part of me and every ounce of me had to make sure this creature was safe and cared for and warm enough, because there was warmers and the temperature and the, even the humidity in the incubator and all these sort of details that parents of the average newborn don't even ever consider, because of the way that the journey just starts differently. And I recall that intensity shaped my journey as a mother, my beginning of this sort of way in which to approach mothering, right? And so fast forward, 2 years later, and you've got this child who feeds herself and knows the alphabet, even at random, and is learning to count and put shoes on the right feet and do all of these things that just don't really involve me anymore, frankly. And it's such a difference between where I once was in the beginning of my journey as a mother and the sort of chasm between then and now. And as I reflect and as I think about where this journey has taken us, I just am so overwhelmed at times with how much of a miracle it really has been, and how many obstacles and how many moments we've overcome and sort of struggled through and found this other end of the tunnel, it almost feels, right? And so I think there's a moment as we begin this journey, especially as sort of the NICU parent starts the journey, and whether you were there for a week or the people that were there for almost a year, right? Which even for me is so unimaginable. And we were there for 109 days, right? There's this desire to sort of always focus on the light at the end of the tunnel, right? This idea that at some point you will go home, and at some point these milestones will be met, and you sort of temper that expectation along the way. But to sort of not only have reached that light, but sort of exited the tunnel of the most kind of acute part of this process is a very humbling experience, and one that I am eternally grateful to have the perspective surrounding that I do. And I think it's such a special and very hopeful message that there will be this time when things change, and there sort of will be a time when, not everything is as it once was. And I think about the fortune that we have to really have no medically lasting issues. And I think about some of the stories that I've read, and accounts from the larger community of people who do have more medically complex situations and do sort of feel some of those lasting effects for much longer, if not for the foreseeable future. And I still think for each of us, there is a moment of appreciation when the milestone is reached, right? When you hear that first word and they take that first step and they graduate from a crib, where they begin to do all of these things that we look forward to in development, because it somehow seems that much sweeter, and it somehow seems that much more special, because we all came to it on our own timeline, right? Nothing about having a preemie, nothing about having children with sort of more complex medical histories or issues is on a normal timeline, right? And so you sort of live kind of outside the bounds of the normal timeline and the normal schedule and the quote unquote normal experience, and you are constantly navigating that. And so as you sort of reach these moments, and I think for me, I kind of, as I was saying earlier, looked at this growth chart and saw us smack dab in the middle there, and it sort of blew my mind, because I said, wow, okay, we're sort of part of this narrative that these are the things that are supposed to be happening when, and here they are. And it's just really so very special to arrive there. And so I am looking forward to all of the moments that we're about to navigate, and all of the firsts that will arrive in their own and very special time. And I think that this is a very special and sort of much more widely inclusive next step to this journey. And I look forward to taking that with you. I look forward to exploring with you as a listener some of the larger and more universal parenting challenges and discussions and kind of topics that will come along. And so I think, once again, it's such a unique and special time as you go from having an infant to having a toddler. And they say the days are endlessly long, especially those that skip nap times or refuse to go to bed, right? And you are sort of on hour 17 of the day. And for those of us who are home full time, the distinction between the days of the week begins to blur. And it is so important to, I think, cherish all of that, because it may feel day by day so kind of endlessly and sometimes hopelessly long, but the years are short and we will blink and go from having babies to suddenly living with tiny people who are very often very much like ourselves, both to all of our great joy and sometimes slight horror. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you for returning for season 2. And I look forward to any questions or comments, suggestions for the journey that is toddlerhood. We can be reached via the website at alltheunexpected, one word, alltheunexpected.com, or via both Facebook at the same name and or Instagram at alltheunexpected. Thank you and have a wonderful week.